Hello, everyone. Welcome to an author conversation with Phuc Tran, hosted by Broward County Library and Ellsworth Public Library.
We are so excited to be working together with Broward County Library once more for our NEA Big Read programming. Michael, did you want to share a little bit about your library's e-newsletter?
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Abby. Once again, my name is Michael Bryant, and I am the Adult Services Coordinator with Broward County Library. I oversee all of the adult programs in Broward County. You do not see him, but one of our collaborators and partners is Sebastian Perez. He's hiding. He has his camera off right now. Sebastian Perez is one of our programmers in Broward County Library. He and I work very, very well together as we develop programs throughout Broward County. I do want to mention to you, just for a quick second, we do have a Broward County Library e-newsletter. You're welcome to find out about all of the fantastic services and programs that Broward County has to offer. You can also sign up for e-card, where you can take advantage of our electronic catalog, where you can see some of our digital collection, which includes books and DVDs. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. And I just want to share a little bit about Ellsworth Public Library. I see some familiar names and faces in the audience, but for those of you who don't already know, Ellsworth Public Library is located in beautiful Down East Maine near Acadia National Park in Bar Harbor. It's a vibrant and essential community resource educating and inspiring the people we serve. And we are also doing our Big Read programming right now. We are very excited to partner with Maine Humanities Council, Lincoln Academy, and Erin Kingsbury, who is currently a Fulbright Scholar in Vietnam. And we'll be working with them this Saturday for a program called Cross Culture Connections. It's a panel discussion with students from Vietnam. So this is a really exciting and unique opportunity. It's going to be Saturday, April 16th at 10 o'clock. So everyone's welcome, and I think there's going to be a link in the chat at some point to sign up for that. We also will be recording that session, so if that time doesn't work for you, please feel free to check back and just watch the recording. And I'd like to now acknowledge some of our sponsors. We'd like to thank the NEA Big Read, which is a program of the National Endowment for the Arts in partnership with Arts Midwest and Ellsworth Public Library for helping to sponsor this program.
In addition to that, we want to thank our sponsor, Broward Public Library Foundation. Broward Public Library Foundation is a 501c3 charitable organization incorporated in 1982, committed to enhancing the collections, programs, and services of the Broward County Library beyond the means of our public funding. Broward Public Library Foundation is a proud sponsor of the NEA Big Read program, striving to achieve a state of excellence throughout the county's family of libraries.
Thanks so much, Michael. I'm just going to remove your spotlight and add one here. Okay, great. So it's my great pleasure to introduce Phuc Tran. Phuc Tran has been a high school Latin teacher for more than 20 years, while also simultaneously establishing himself as a highly sought-after tattooer in the Northeast. Tran graduated from Bard College in 1995 with a BA in Classics and received the Callanan Classics Prize. He taught Latin, Greek, and Sanskrit in New York at the Collegiate School and was an instructor at Brooklyn College's Summer Latin Institute. Most recently, he taught Latin, Greek, and German at the Waynflete School in Portland, Maine. His 2012 TEDx talk, Grammar, Identity, and the Dark Side of the Subjunctive, was featured on NPR's TED Radio Hour. His acclaimed memoir, Sigh, a Misfit's memoir of great books, punk rock, and the fight to fit in, received the 2020 New England Book Award for Nonfiction and the 2021 Maine Literary Award for Memoir. He tattoos and lives with his family in Portland, Maine. And I just want to add that for anyone out there who's familiar with the Maine Humanities Council, their Read Me program, every year they ask a Maine author to choose 2 books to kind of focus on for the summer. And Christina Baker Klein is the author that was chosen this year to make the selections. And she has selected Saigon for the nonfiction pick. And I think it's a great pick for this year. So I think Sebastian has put a link in the chat. Thank you, Sebastian. And that's kind of what's coming up for this book. I mean, among other things, I'm sure. So I just wanted to make sure everyone had a chance to connect with local libraries that might be doing more programming around the book. Okay, so Phuc, thank you so much for joining us. This is such a treat. As I've told you, I just finished the book and I'm just like gushing about it to everyone I know.
Oh, thanks.
So if I seem a little like amped up, that's why I'm just really excited.
Oh, good.
So thank you so much for joining us. And I do realize that some folks may not have had the option or the opportunity, I should say, to read the book before the program. So could you just start off by, telling us a little bit about it and even maybe doing a short reading?
Sure. My book is a memoir of my time growing up in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, in the 70s and 80s as the only refugee family in a primarily white town in rural PA. So that went really smoothly, as you can imagine. And that's why I wrote a book about it. And it's I think the framework is really like a classic coming of age story. And one of the ways that I think I found solace and a sense of place in the world was through great books, which is why it's in the sort of subtitle of the book. And so each chapter of my book is actually told through the lens of a sort of classic work of the Western canon that I really loved. So I don't want to say too much more. Spoiler alert, I do survive. And I'll leave it at that. Yeah. And I'd be happy to read for, just like 5 minutes or so, just to give people a sense of the book, if that's okay.
That would be great. Before you do, I just forgot to mention one thing. As we go along, if folks want to put questions in the comments, that would be great. We'll also have, I think Sebastian's writing this for me too. We'll have a Q&A time at the end. I just wanted to make sure we got that in there. So, but yes, please, we'd love to hear some from the book. Sure.
Yeah, this is super short. It's sort of, it's like a short sort of vignette that has like a beginning and a middle and an end. It takes place when I'm 9 years old. I'm with my parents. We're shopping. I'm with my parents and my brother, whose name is Lou. And we're shopping at a grocery store in our town. It was called Giant. I guess it was like a local franchise, maybe. So when I refer to the Giant, I don't mean like a giant. It's the name of the store. August 1983. Where are you people from? We were shopping at Giant, pushing our cart slowly. Lou and I took turns dangling from the cart, making impassioned pleas to our parents to buy Count Chocula. An older gentleman stepped into our path, intercepting us with his question, the question that, as I grew up in Carlisle, I would sustain regularly, a query angled with varying degrees of inflection, degrees from curious to neutral to cutting. Where are you people from? Even at 9 years old, I heard the nuances of you people. I caught his drift. His drift was sharp and edgy. It was pointed. This man's drift didn't sound like a friendly game of catch. My parents hadn't heard him because they were Vietnamesing with each other about their shopping list, and they weren't expecting anyone to speak to them. No one knew us in that informal, neighborly way, and my parents weren't part of the small town colloquium that burbled and babbled around us. I saw other people, friends and neighbors, stopping and talking to one another. How's Little League? Donna doing okay? Did you see the game last night? We weren't in Little League. No one asked about my mother's health. We didn't watch sports on TV. The man spoke up louder with a kind of volume that inferred lack of Englishing. Where are you people from? I nudged my father, who broke off from his conversation with my mother, to acknowledge the man. Oh, yes, sir? Always publicly polite. Where are you people from? The man had yellow-tinted aviators and a graying mustache, reminding me of Magnum PI from TV. His belly overhung a large belt buckle, pressing taut against his plaid shirt. Maybe he was a private eye. Maybe he was working a case, or maybe he was grocery store security. Oh, we're from Vietnam. My father smiled widely, nervously. His default was always to smile in awkward or strange situations, but I felt my father's posture tense up. My father also caught the man's drift, and he moved protectively in between the man and us. Yeah, thought so. Thought I recognized it. Vietnamese. I haven't heard it since I was in country. Thought to myself, sounds like Vietnamese. My brother Lou started to correct the man's pronunciation of Vietnamese, but I kicked him from behind the cart. My brother Lou caught my drift as well, and he shut up. In the Marines there, stationed in Da Nang, 68 to 69. He looked at us all as he spoke, eyes slinking from my father's rigid smile to my mother, to us kids. Oh yes, Da Nang is in the middle of Vietnam. We're from Saigon. My father continued to smile as we stood still, nervous prey, whiffing a predatory scent. My eyes scanned the American flag pin and other buttons on his jacket lapel. The gentleman looked at us, but his eyes were distant, their focus going far beyond where we were, right through us. I looked behind myself at the produce section, understanding that he wasn't looking at the broccoli or cabbage. Beautiful country there, Nam. He said Nam with a southern lilt. Nam. Carlisle, surprising to most outsiders, has a slight southern drawl to its local Appalachian dialect. Beautiful country, Nam. Goddamn shame what happened there. My father nodded. Goddamn shame, the man murmured. We all nodded and stood there for a time, staring at Mr. Magnum PI as he stared at the broccoli behind us. We, as a family in turn, looked blankly around. My parents gazed farther down the aisle, my brother Lou and I fidgeting wordlessly at the cart, everyone bobbling their heads. The man hadn't asked us another question, so we had no answer to give. Well, you people have a good day. Thank you. You too, sir. My father and mother smiled and waved. Lou had used the distraction to sneak a box of Count Chocula into the cart. He nudged me. Why did that man farther down the aisle, sorting through the different cooking oils on the shelves? I was pushing the cart, so I answered my brother. Oh, that's because the man fought in the Vietnam War. The metal grocery cart resumed its screechy circuit in between the aisles. Well, so? Well, we're from Vietnam. I said Vietnam the way the man had said it. Well, not me. I was born here in Carlisle. My brother Lou had a point. Well, that is true, but people are always going to ask you where you're from. But I'm from Pennsylvania, spoken like the future lawyer he would be. It's true. You were born here, but it won't make sense to people. They'll still ask you where you're from, and they mean mom and dad and me, your family, where we're from. How did that man know that we weren't from here? It's complicated. I chose not to explain bigotry to my brother Lou, though he probably already knew it. He had experienced being the only one in his classes too, but at least the other one at school was his brother. I was blindly hoping that he wasn't aware of the prejudice, but who was I kidding? Whose innocence was I trying to preserve? And why did that man say that it was a shame what happened? Lou persisted. I don't know. He didn't really say, did he? I was pained to tell my brother Lou to get used to being asked where he was from, but he had to. And eventually he would, whether I wanted him to or not. Get used to it or get crushed by it. We all learned quickly to smile and nod whenever veterans would see us and tell us that they were in Nam. They named their branch of service, told us what years they were there, where they were stationed, and how they found the people or the weather. Later, when I was older and just a little bit savvier, I would round out my exchange by saying something like, thanks for your service, or my grandparents worked for the US Embassy, volunteering something to identify myself as one of the good ones. But that was much later, when I realized that this wasn't about me or my family. It was about them and what we symbolized for them. How could I explain to my brother that we were symbols? That some people would never be able to see us as just people? That we were symbols of a painful and confusing war? Symbols of the refugees they saw on TV? Symbols of what they were afraid of? Symbols of the people who had shot at them and killed their friends, brothers, and sons. Symbols of whatever they wanted to see. That was what we were for Mr. Magnum PI. In the middle of the giant grocery store, we had to pause our shopping and be symbols for what he saw in the fuzzy, distant gaze of recollection and trauma. The Trans didn't choose to be symbolic or archetypal, but it wasn't our choice to make. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. That was really nice. Okay, so I have a bunch of questions. I want to start off with, I'll just say, I feel like you're able to remember conversations and situations from your childhood with an amazing amount of detail and clarity. That's just one example, but there's so many others in the book that it feels so real and present. And so I'm just wondering how you were able to do that as a writer. Did you keep journals when you were a kid? When you decided to kind of start this journey writing this book, did you speak with family members to try to reconstruct some of those memories, or maybe you have another method?
No, it's definitely, when they call it creative nonfiction, like the dialogue is definitely the creative part. So I didn't keep a journal, and some of the events are what I call sort of like composite events, that they're sort of like this amalgamation of something that happened all the time. I think I think I've said before that I would definitely put my hand on a sacred text, the Bible, Quran, whatever, what have you. I would definitely put my hand on a Bible and swear that events happened. But I would never swear to the dialogue that happened. I like to kind of think that like the events are sort of like the bricks of the edifice, as it were, the facade or the building, as it were, the structure. And that the dialogue is the mortar, it kind of holds the event together. But, I definitely, the dialogue at least is definitely reconstructed or sort of, fabricated to kind of move the scene along and allows me to kind of, tint and play with sort of the tensions in the scene.
That makes perfect sense. But I also think that some of the emotions that you were able to tap into, I didn't have similar experiences to what you were experiencing, but I remembered those feelings of like frustration with your parents for not understanding something the way you understand it. Those things I think were just really well done.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So at the end in the acknowledgements, I don't think I'm giving anything away. You kind of allude to the fact that, of course, this is your whole young life. You can't write every single scene, right? So you had to make some choices about what to include and what to cut. Can you talk a little bit about how you made those decisions? Were there things in, like, was your early draft like 1,000 pages and you had to cut it down? Or I'm just curious how you would make those kind of choices.
Yeah, I think so. The book was originally 12 chapters long, and now the published version is 11. So I think there was, my editor, Jasmine Faustino, was incredible in sort of helping me make the story as efficient as it could be, even clocking in at over, close to 300 pages. Like it was just too long as it was. And so I think like if there were any vignettes or stories that felt redundant to her, like that didn't add, substantially more to the story, we just cut those. I'd say that there were like one or two stories that I wish that we hadn't cut, but I've sort of recycled that material for other things. So all's well that ends well. But it was not
for a sequel, right?
Yeah, yeah. I'm not. Yeah, it's a good. I don't. The sequel of the book where I go to college and then like become an adult and all that stuff. I don't know if that has the same narrative tension. I don't know if anyone really wants to read the chapter about whether Phuc can refinance his mortgage to take advantage of historically low interest rates or anything like that. I don't know. Yeah, right.
Okay, so switching gears a little bit, when you were young, did you think you would grow up to be a teacher? And how did your experiences with teachers in your youth kind of affect how you decided to teach?
Yeah, I love that question. Yes, once I got over wanting to be like an Air Force pilot, like a jet pilot, or I think at one point I thought I might want to be an exorcist. I have no idea why, although the Latin really does make sense. I think it was because I saw The Exorcist very young, and I was very impressionable. But I think by the end of elementary school and definitely in middle school, teacher was top 3 professions for me, and then I thought maybe I wanted to be sort of teach at the university level. But I think once I was in undergraduate and college, I knew, like when I applied to grad school, I went to a graduate program that was specifically designed for people who wanted to teach in high school. Just because I felt like that was sort of the place at which, I as a student and as like a young person was most needed the most help and was the most impressionable. And I just thought that that would be the place for me to be most impactful.
And I think if I'm remembering the bio correctly, I mean, you've taught Latin and other classical languages. Did you ever teach English and or art? Because you have many talents and interests.
I have taught English classes from time to time. And I think folks just generally want me to stay in my lane as badly as I am. I don't do a good job of staying in my lane. I've never taught an art class, but never say never. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that would be cool. Okay, this next question, I have to give credit to my coworker, Renee. I just love this question so much, and it's not mine, so I want to make sure she gets credit. So she says, you write about the inflections used in Vietnamese and how it differs so much from English, and you do that a few times in the book, I think. Do you think this sparked an interest in Latin, or did your love of the English language and Latin ever rekindle your relationship with the Vietnamese language?
Yeah, I went off to college to double major in art and English. And I really loved English for the literature side, not for sort of like the nerdy sort of grammatical, and sort of etymological side of things. And then by the end of my first semester at Bard, I bailed on both of those majors and did not want to be an English or an art major. And then I just, on a total whim, signed up for ancient Greek and took it. It was just like the hardest thing that I'd ever taken. This is a true story. I never wore glasses. I went into ancient Greek, and by the end of the 3 months, like I was like just studying so hard that like I was nearsighted, and then I had to wear glasses. So like it really, like Greek is responsible for these spectacles. That's so hard. I mean, I think like growing up bilingual, like it was like that access to different modes of communication, it was so sort of deeply baked into me. Like I can't even tell you if that planted a seed for my interest in other languages. I guess I assume that has sort of laid a foundation for my facility with languages, but I also know lots of people who aren't bilingual and then also acquire tons of languages. So I didn't, at least in high school, I avoided taking other languages as much as possible. Like I really was not, I didn't take any foreign languages in high school because I just wasn't interested in it. Because I really thought like I had this very narrow sense of what I was going to be and what I was going to do. And then when I got to college, it kind of all blew up in my face. So yeah, maybe there's a book there now that I put it that way.
Right. What do you say to people when they say, I mean, I'm sure some people say this out there, that like Latin is a dead language, so why bother studying it? I mean, what would your defense be for that?
I don't really have a defense for it. I think that's fair to say. That said, I think, I do have a long defense, and I'll try to make this as brief as possible. I think that there's a kind of a wrong-headed approach when we talk about Latin being a dead language and therefore it's not useful. That's generally like the positionality at which people come when they attack the classical languages, and I would say that that's not even, it's like the wrong conversation to have. Like if you're going to come at Latin with the sort of the sledgehammer of like pragmatism or utilitarianism, like there's lots of things that don't withstand that. Aristotle, he divides the arts into two camps. This is really fun for me though. So I'm gonna go for this.
Yeah,
I'll try to keep it on 3 minutes. Okay. So Aristotle talks about two sort of modes of arts, and he talks about the servile arts and the liberal arts. And the servile arts are the things that are functional, and he calls them the servile arts because those are the crafts that generally like enslaved people or servants did, like carpentry, blacksmithing, cooking, and things like that, right? Things that were a craft. And then the liberal arts were the skills that a free person needed to be a thoughtful, philosophical, contributing, sort of active member of society. And Latin falls for me like in that camp, right? So in the liberal arts camp, Aristotle put things like rhetoric and geometry and writing and things like that. So I think like when we talk about something that is in the liberal arts camp of things, and we and we critique it using sort of the categories of the servile arts. Like it doesn't work, right? You're sort of, it's sort of like, it's sort of like saying, well, flowers aren't useful. Like we should just get rid of flowers, right? I mean, like it just doesn't even, it's not the right category and the right criteria by which we should judge something. So I can't defend the usefulness of Latin because, from a servile arts perspective, it is not useful. But I think from a liberal arts perspective, there are many things that are great about it. And and there's no student that I've ever had who said that they didn't grow or learn something or were enriched or deepened by the study of Latin. So I guess if you don't want those things for your life, that's obviously your choice. But, yeah.
No, that's a great answer. Okay, switching gears again. I'm a little all over the place here, but in the chapter entitled Pygmalion, you talk about the power of music to connect people. And for those who have read the book, not to give any spoilers, but I'm talking about like trading mixtapes and trying to kind of broaden a musical awareness and appreciation by talking with friends, I guess. So I'm just wondering, I know this is kind of a big, broad question, but the music industry, as we all know, has changed so much since the day of mixtapes. You even referred later in the book about CDs and like which bands are on the radio. But as we know now, with the internet and streaming, it's like a completely different animal. So I was just wondering if you had any like hot takes on the internet and how it's influenced this tradition of sharing like music and songs. Has it improved the ability to share music? Has it killed something that was sacred, in your opinion, or a little of both, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely say D, all of the above. Like I think for me and my friends, when we were, kids in bands and punk rock bands, making a record was like so high barrier. Like I remember even in college, I was in a band and we were trying to make a demo, and I literally spent like $600 or $700. I put it on my credit card to make one CD in order to like make a demo tape. It was just, it was also 1993 or 94. So it was just really cost prohibitive. So I think like the internet in some ways has made things, it's very low barrier, right? Like it's democratizing in the sense that like everyone has almost equal access to a lot of things like, tools, and for recording demos and reaching an audience, at the same time, like the floodgates are now open. So it's low barrier, meaning that, that you just have access to too much music, so that's hard. Like, I think like what I hear you saying, Abby, a little bit is like that there used to be something special about like, oh, you like this band, I love this band too. And then like you sort of have this like instant sort of kinship, right? Like just add water kind of a thing. And now it's harder to find that because there's just so much music out there, and it's harder to find people who like the same thing, because like everybody can just find like this like super obscure Japanese band that no one's ever heard of, and like all of a sudden that's like your favorite thing. So I think it's a double-edged, it's certainly a Pandora's box, right? As lots of people have said.
Yeah, I think so. And also just even like I've been sharing music with a cousin of mine, and I'm sure she appreciates it, but she's also inundated with so much more information, like we all are on a daily basis. It's not maybe as special as like you described getting the mixtape from a friend. It's like that's such a like exciting thing, maybe just we're living in different times, I guess. But
yeah, for sure. I wish that, I remember like in, music was expensive, like as a kid, I was like, I either like would record things off the radio, or I would just like spend X number of dollars of my allowance to buy it. And so I probably knew like 24 records really, really well, like every, like note for note, word for word. And now I think it's harder for, I don't see, sort of teenagers and my kids sort of going as deep, on a record. Like, I think it's much more sort of like singles and song driven than it is like album driven too.
Yeah, no, that makes sense for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to jump around here a little bit. So, of course, as you said in this book, you recount your life kind of through the lens of classic literature, which is so interesting to read. I just have to ask, what are you reading now? Who are some of your favorite authors, or any books coming up that you're really excited about reading?
Yeah, actually, so because of the Maine Humanities Council sort of nod from Christina Baker Klein, I hadn't read Meredith Hall's book Beneficence. Yeah. And so I just finished that, and it was so amazing. Like there wasn't a page that I didn't read where I read a sentence and I thought, I wish I'd written that sentence. It was like, that book is incredible. Like, so like probably one of my favorite books I've read in the last like 5 or 10 years. So big shout out to Meredith Hall's book Beneficence. Yeah, that's incredible. Highly recommend it, and not just because she's on the read me campaign.
Yeah, no, I echo that sentiment. We were lucky enough to have her on a author talk, oh gosh, a couple winters ago, and she's just an amazing human being. But also, yeah, the book just floored me. I was like heartbroken over it for days.
Yeah, it's
in a good way.
Yeah,
Fair.
for sure. Yeah, trigger warning. I mean, it's not a happy book, but it's incredible.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so one thing that I wondered about is you talk in the book a lot, of course, about literature, about punk rock, and other things as well. And you kind of mention art like here and there, but I just wondered because I'm guessing, I mean, art is a big part of your day-to-day life now as a tattoo artist. Could you talk a little bit more about, your journey through high school with art and like how that grew and developed and like where tattooing came into that in your life?
Sure. I mean, I was a huge, like, super art nerd in high school too. It was definitely like sort of like a B plot in the book that we just had to sort of, my editor had to cut out, and I felt was the right call. Like, it was just sort of like too many. It was a little bit too much like channel changing in terms of like what the focus of the book was. Like, I was definitely like a super like book and reading nerd and English class nerd, but I ran out of art classes by the time I was a senior in high school. Like, by the time I was a senior, like, I'd taken every art class that I could have possibly taken. And so my art teacher just gave me an independent study, and he like set up this like private, like, sort of painting studio in a closet for me. And I just would go there, 5 times a week and just paint whatever I wanted to paint. And he would just give me an A. It was pretty great. I mean, I really did do work. I mean, I really produced like great work, I think, at the time. So, and as far as the tattooing piece goes, I think it was just part of like that, like 80s, like subculture of like punk rock and skateboarding. Like, all of my friends got tattoos when we were in high school. I didn't, because it was cost prohibitive. And also I saw that like the guy, in my town who was doing tattoos, not even in my town, like 2 towns away, it just wasn't good work. And I just thought, oh, like, even as a 16-year-old, I was like, I don't think that's not what I want right now. So yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. What are some of the most, I don't know if you can like pull this out of your head, but like interesting or unusual tattoos that you've been asked to do?
Oh my, so many. Let's see. This is not perfect. I don't think you'll need to bleep this out, but I did like
okay.
I did like this tattoo on a bartender here in Portland of a penis fighting a vagina. That was pretty funny. Very, very weird and memorable. I had a client who had his pinky toe torn off in a hay baling accident when he was a kid. And so he had 9 toes. And so at the stump where his little toe used to be, I put little dotted lines and a pair of scissors, like a little cut here symbol. That was pretty funny. I mean, little things like that. They're very funny, but I love tattooing, and very much, I would say, equal parts for hearing clients and hearing their stories as much as it is for the art piece. I think I'm very often I'm meeting people at like an apex or a nadir of their life, like they're there to celebrate like a birth or a wedding or an engagement, or they're there to memorialize like the death of a parent or a child or a spouse. So it's like in any given day, like you can go from like just like the most incredible, like sort of celebratory experience, and then to go to another place, like your next client, in like 30 minutes is like in a very hard place. And that's really powerful. And, it takes a little bit of gear changing, but I'm here for that. I love that part of it as much as I love the tattooing.
Oh, that's great. And I'm guessing that, I mean, I don't know exactly how this works, but if they come in and kind of give you a sense of what's going on in their lives and what they're looking for, you might not have that information ahead of time. Am I right? So you have to probably switch gears very quickly.
For sure. Definitely. And I always want to ask people what the tattoo is about. If I'll always say, like, if you were sitting in my chair, I'd be like, oh, Abby, tell me about this tattoo you're getting, if you want to share. And then, and if they're in a hard place, I think like people want to talk about like the hard stuff, like, or they want to be heard. And I feel like that's part of my job as a tattooer. It's a little bit like being a bartender or like a cab driver, right? Like, I'm providing you with a service and I'm here to listen.
Do you ever feel tempted to kind of talk them out of something that you think they might regret, or do you feel like that's a line you don't want to cross?
I used to do that a lot more when I was younger as a tattooer, and I do that less now. It's funny. I think my wife probably wishes that I did that more, like interceded, but I actually, but I feel like it's not my place to tell. Yeah, like I'll weigh in on like technical things. Like I'll be like, oh, that's too small of a design. It's not going to age well. But if I just think it's like not a great idea, like I'm going to get my fiance's name tattooed across my neck or something like that. It's really, I try not to sort of pass judgment on people, because I think sometimes, it's a little bit of that, like, life will, sort of give you the test first and teach you the lesson later. And I may gently prod, like be like, oh, are you sure about that? And if people are like, yeah, I definitely want, my fiance's name tattooed on my neck, I'll be like, okay, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good answer. Okay, so I took a little quote from the book. I hope you don't mind to
Please,
kind of
yeah.
build into this question. So it's a little longer than the other questions. But
Sure.
in your graduation speech, you speak about souvenirs and you say, quote, "I don't need souvenirs and I don't want souvenirs. None of you need souvenirs either. As long as you laugh, won't you carry all the good times with you? As long as you cry, won't you carry all the bad times with you?" End quote, which I thought was a great sentiment. So from my perspective as a non-tattooed person, and I want to just say that I'm very ignorant of the culture, so I apologize in advance. But I could see
you have to say yeah as a non-tattooed.
Yeah, right. Yeah, next time I come to Portland, I'll look you up for sure.
Okay.
But from my perspective, again, I don't have any tattoos, but I could see tattoos as being seen as sort of a souvenir from a time period or a person or a place or a time in your life. So how do you view tattoos and what they represent? Like, you said a little bit about how people kind of come to you in different times in their lives, but does it represent a certain thing to you, or is it different for everyone?
It is definitely different for everyone, and I think the thing that, for me, and I think for a lot of people, the thing that it's really powerful about tattooing is that, and tattoos, is that it's sort of resonant on so many different levels. And I can't think of a lot of things, maybe music also that operates on this, because like, when I was younger, like really young, like in my teenage years, like I wanted tattoos to sort of mark myself as belonging to a certain group and not belonging to another group, right? Like, and in its origins, like tattooing really is designed culturally, like anthropologically, it's, sort of designed to like demarcate someone, right? Like, they don't belong to like the main group, and so something like in primitive times, that either meant like you got tattooed because you were a criminal or a prisoner, or you got tattooed because you were like a shaman or a priest or a priestess or some sort of a holy figure. But in either case, you were marginalized. And so that was definitely sort of the drive for me as a teenager. And then, looking for belonging, and like, if I had a tattoo and that guy had a tattoo, well, then like, hey, like we could talk, and, we belong to the same sort of like, club. But then also there's like an aesthetic piece to it. Like I just love how my tattoos look, and I collect them from different artists. So there's like an aesthetic layer to it. And then there's like the sort of memento layer to it, right? That I look at every tattoo that I have, and I can totally remember like where I was living, how much rent I was paying, like what I was going through in my life at the time. So I think unintentionally, like for me, like it definitely, yeah, every tattoo is a is a souvenir for sure. But it wasn't the intent, but it's certainly, you can't avoid looking at your tattoos and remembering like exactly like who you were and where you were in your life, for sure.
I can see that, but also if you're getting them over time from different artists for different reasons, I can also see it being kind of like an evolution of this expression of who you are in a really interesting way. That sounds really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I want to switch gears a little bit because I've seen some questions fly through here, and I want to make sure everybody. So let me just.
Yeah.
Okay, one question I see, and I've been asked before, is would you be willing to, hold on one second, pronounce your name in Vietnamese for us? Because you explain in the book how your first name in Vietnamese is pronounced so differently than we pronounce it in English. So if you're willing to do that, just so we can hear it, that would be great. But if I understand if that's
No, yeah, that's great. No, that's totally fine. So in Vietnam, the names are backwards. So you say your first, the first name that you say is your last name. So it's like your family name, and then you say your middle name, and then you say your first name. So it's sort of like, so when you introduce yourself, like you would, Abby, you would say like, I'm Morrow Abby, so that everyone would be like, oh, she belongs to the Morrow clan, and she's Abby. Fun fact, actually, Roman names also do the same thing, which is just sort of like a weird coincidence. So in Vietnamese, my name would be Tran Minh Phuc, and the way it sounds in Vietnamese is Trăng Minh Phuc. So Tran is pronounced in Vietnamese is pronounced Trăng, which doesn't sound anything like Tran. And then my first name, Phuc, is in Vietnamese pronounced Phuc. So yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
Nancy would like to know, sorry, having a little bit of problem with my cursor. There we go. Were your parents alive when your memoir was published? And if so, what was their reaction to the book?
Sure. Yeah, they are still alive now. They didn't read it for a long time. My mother, her English is not great. Like her literacy is not great. So, and the book is written at a level at which I think she would have a hard time sort of appreciating or understanding. My dad's English is very good. So for a long time, like after the book came out, they like attended like the Zoom book launch because the book came out during the pandemic. And then it was kind of like I didn't hear from them for a while, and we're not like the closest, we're not estranged by any means. And then so finally, like maybe 9 months after the book had come out, like they hadn't texted me to say like good job or you wrote a book. Like it was like nothing, and I was like it's fine. But then after 9 months, we were on a family text thread. And I finally just texted them. I said, hey, have you guys read the book? I mean, you don't have to, like, it's, I understand, like, you certainly can choose not to. I just am curious, like, if you read it, what do you think of it? Like, yeah, let me know. And then my dad texted back, yes, I read it. It was very painful to read. And then that was it. Sure, I can appreciate that. That was very painful for him to read. But so that's all I heard.
Oh, that's interesting. I read another memoir recently that was also dealt with a lot of painful childhood memories. And in the acknowledgments, the writer said that she knew her father would never read it. She just knew that he wouldn't. So I find it very interesting that your father would read it, even if there wasn't a lot of conversation. That speaks a lot to me. Says a lot.
Yeah. Do you think that means that like that's like his like sort of low key way of being supportive? That's what I think, right?
Yeah, that's how I read it. Totally. Yeah.
Same.
Okay, let's see. Marie would like to know, do you have any interest in punk rock literature, or have you recommended any to young people that you're involved with through teaching?
Wow, I don't. I would love to. I don't know what punk rock literature is. What is like? Is that a genre?
I'm not sure either.
Clarifying question.
Yeah. And I can move on to another question.
Yeah, we can come back to that, Marie. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, she also would like to know what's in the works for you right now.
Yeah, for as far as writing goes, so I just I have this is a longer story. I'll try to keep it short. I have 3 children's books coming out.
That's great.
Yeah, where HarperCollins. It's coming out on HarperCollins, but it's I'm working with Pete Oswald, who did the vegetable series, like he did like the Bad Seed, the Good Egg, the Smart Cookie.
Oh yeah.
And then he did the Underwear Dragon. So he and I collaborated on a children's book, and we shopped it around to whoever, and HarperCollins was super excited by it, and they want us to write 3 versions of 3 of the series. That's not coming out until 2024, 25, and 26. So publishing industry is very, very slow. Holy cow, it's so slow. And then I'm working on a novel. I've got notes for a novel that I'm going to start writing this summer.
Oh, wow. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Would you ever consider writing a graphic novel?
And
illustrating?
Never say never. I feel like, I would have to like learn how to draw that way, if that makes any sense. Like my drawing is for tattooing, and it's really, really, really specific for tattooing. It's not to say that like I can't sort of learn how to do that, but I'm not, yeah, sure, I would consider it.
Okay, yeah. Eric would like to know, how many tattoos do you have?
I lost count. I usually refer to the hard drive. My hard drive is about 85 or 90% full. So yeah, so I've got about 10% left to cover, I think. And then yeah.
Wow, that's great. And Sebastian would like to know, is there a body area where you would not tattoo someone if they came in?
No. I mean, there are some places like that tattoos don't heal well, like the on your palms and on the soles of your feet. Like, they generally don't have a great survival rate just because of the wear and tear on the skin and things like that. But, I think if I told, if you came in, Abby, and you're like, I really want the Dewey Decimal, number for my favorite book on my palm, and I said, well, this may not heal up, like you think it's going to heal up, and you say, I don't care, I want you to do it, I would do it. I just want you to be informed, that it's not going to heal up well. But
yeah, definitely. A lot of librarians, or some, I guess, have like a tattoo right here of the alphabet because we use it so much for shelving, and I have considered that. Okay, so here's from Marie, just to follow up on that punk rock literature question. She says, I can give you an example. I Want to Be Your Joey Ramone is a raw, edgy, emotional novel about growing up punk and living to tell. The Clash, Social Distortion, Dead Kennedys, Patti Smith, The Ramones, From Black Flag to Alice Bag. This book takes a look at the intersection of music and identity.
Oh, I don't even know that book, so I want to check that out. But is there a genre? Like, that's so interesting. Yeah, I know that Celia Perez wrote like a YA graphic novel about punk rock, but I guess I don't know enough about it. I mean, I guess there are lots of like punk rock musicians now who have written like memoirs or histories about them, but I guess I didn't realize that there were so many of them that like they constituted a quorum to turn into a genre.
Yeah, I didn't either. That's exciting to find out.
Yeah, thanks,
we probably have time for a couple more questions. There's a question here from Abby. She says, have you gone back to Vietnam as an adult or brought your children?
No, it's very high on my list. For a long time, I wanted to go with my parents. And they refused. My parents actually steadfastly refused to go back to Vietnam. I mean, I think it's sort of a product of being on the losing side of a civil war. And so, this is like in the early 2000s, like I realized like, come on, mom and dad, let's go. It'll be, I just thought it would be fun, and it would be, much more meaningful for me to go with my parents so they could tell me where things used to be and so on and so forth. And my parents just would not go. And so my wife and I were just going to go by ourselves. And then she, had our first child. And so we sort of had to put that on hold. And now, I think we're just waiting for my girls to be old enough to sort of manage the flight and the trip over there. So it's very high on our list of places to go. Now that my parents are definitely not ever going to go.
Right. I would imagine it would be really interesting to hear your perspective on that trip, and like through articles or, any way you wanted to write about it. That would be really fun to hear.
Thanks.
Okay. Eric says, he had a good question and it just flew by me. Hold on just a second. Eric says he got his first tattoo on his 50th birthday and he plans to get his second tattoo on his 60th birthday in September. Are you interested?
Sure. Yeah. You can email me, Eric, at my shop website. We can talk.
That's great. Okay, we have another one here from Mary, and this might be the last question. Okay. She says, you utilized your intellect to surmount many social obstacles in high school and ultimately attaining the academic recognition from your classmates that you desired. As a teacher, have you assisted young students in their struggles?
Oh, gosh. I sure hope so. I would like to think so. But I guess that's more of a question for my students than for me. I think I would like to say that I've helped every student and I've been the best teacher that they've had, but who knows? I certainly am still in touch with, students now, former students who are now in their 30s and whatever. It was very funny, actually. So I did a book reading in New York last week for the launch of my paperback. And one of my former students from a school that I taught at in New York came to the reading, and he's in his 30s now. And so he's like a grown man. He came up to me. He called me Mr. Tran, which was like super weird. I was like, oh, okay, just having like a grown man call you Mr. Tran. And then he's like, I printed out 2 papers that I wrote while I was in undergrad, inspired by 2 talks that you gave in class. And I want you to know I got A's on both of them. It was really sweet. Anyway, so
yeah. Well, I think right there is proof that you definitely had an impact for sure. Yeah. Okay, I have one more question if we can just squeeze it in.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, this is one of mine. In the memoir, as a young person, you were often trying to fit in. What now, like looking back on all of this, what does it mean to fit in for you? And like, how does the concept of belonging evolved over time?
Oh gosh, yeah. And I'm so
I know
glad
it's kind of a big question.
No, it's great. I love that question, Abby. And the phrase "fit in" the subtitle of the book is really kind of a red herring, because I think that baked into the idea of fitting in means like what can I change about myself in order to have people accept me for who I am, right? Which is like it's a sort of it can't happen, it's not sustainable, like changing yourself in order to seek belonging, because Brene Brown says that the opposite of fitting in is belonging, right? And that belonging is really what we all want, and that fitting in is sort of like it's not sustainable and not healthy, and frankly just toxic. So I think that that's what I wanted. Like I wanted a sense of belonging, and and for me, like that sense of belonging was really underpinned by wanting to feel seen, wanting to feel valued, and wanting to feel understood. And that's not something that I felt in my family. And the first place that I really discovered that feeling, the feeling of being seen, valued, and understood, were in great books, like reading The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne and things like that. And also, my English teachers, they were really the first people that made me feel seen, valued, and understood. So that was the first place that I really felt community and belonging.
As a librarian, that's great to hear. And just a reader too.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you so much. I think we're going to wrap up this evening. Thank you to everyone who joined us. I'm going to bring Michael back on if he's out there. There he is.
Yes.
Okay, let me just add your spotlight. Okay. Phuc, thank you again so much. I'm just going to remind everyone that the Ellsworth Public Library, we are continuing our Big Read programs through the middle of May. And those programs include several that I don't have in front of me, but the ones I wrote down here are a memoir writing workshop with Caitlin Shetterly. We're going to do a virtual cartoon workshop with Rick Stromoski for kids, which we're excited about and has a Star Wars theme. And we are going to do a panel discussion with the Unified Asian Communities Group. So we're really excited about that new partnership as well. So more information on all of those programs coming soon. And I think Sebastian, thank you, has put the Facebook link in the chat. If you don't see it right away, I will get to it soon. So just kind of keep checking and we'll have more information about all that coming soon. And I'll turn it over to Michael.
Thank you very much, Abby. Also from Broward County Library, we have a fantastic online program titled Let's Talk About It, Women's Suffrage. Sebastian, if you'll be so kind to place the registration link in the chat. It's an online book discussion with Dr. Jane Caputi. And so we're looking forward to that particular program. We want to thank everyone for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us tonight. We want to give a special thanks to Phuc Tran because you took your time out to be with us and give us such valuable information and such insight into your writing, your history, and things of that nature. So thank you so much for that. We want to thank the Broward Public Library Foundation, one of our fantastic sponsors for this particular program and our NEA Big Read program in general. We also want to thank Ellsworth Public Library for their sponsorship for this program. Thank you to Abby for her fantastic leadership for planning and implementing the program tonight. So thank you very much, Abby.
And thank you so much, Michael. Without your initiative to connect the Ellsworth Public Library with Broward County Library, we would not be doing this in this way this evening. And I've really enjoyed working with you. And I've learned so much about the Big Read and just being a librarian from you. So I really appreciate it. I also want to thank Sarah Levitt, who helped us book the event, and the NEA Big Read Arts Midwest for sponsoring these programs. Huge shout out to Sebastian Perez for keeping everything going behind the scenes, helping us with program planning and implementation. And thank you to all of you out there for attending the program. I really encourage you to read the book. If you're in the Ellsworth area, we do have free copies of the book to give away. If you're anywhere, definitely go buy the book, support local independent bookstores. I don't know what you have down there in Florida, but we have Bookstacks in Bucksport. We have Blue Hill Books in Blue Hill. Sherman's in Bar Harbor, anywhere I'm sure can order it if they don't already have it. And I'll turn it back over to you for the survey link, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you very much. One of the best ways for you to let us know what you want us to do, what programs you want us to provide you, what service you want us to bring to you, is to complete this short survey. Sebastian will put the survey in the chat box. We encourage you to complete the survey. It is the best way for you to let us know what future programs you want us to bring to you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks again and have a great evening, everyone.
Thanks so much,
Take care.
everybody.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.